You have looked down on me and insulted me. As such, we must duel. Cyan couldn't bear to be looked down on any longer, having received such disrespect from this country bumpkin.
Hey pal, something like a challenge to a duel isn't something you should do so casually.
He had never thought that something like a duel challenge would come from the mouth of this 13-year-old kid. Who's your pal?
If you don't want to be friends, then fine. In any case, don't say anything that you'll regret and just go. Stop bothering me already.
You're scared, right?
Scared?
That's right. It's obvious that you're scared. If you're too afraid to duel me, then just quickly apologize.
And what should I do if I'm not afraid? But I don't want to fight, and I don't want to apologize.
Don't you even know what honor is?
I do know that it isn't a word that you should utter so lightly.
You're insulting me again? That son of a bitch. Who does he think he is to keep telling me what to do?
Don't. A duel isn't something you recklessly jump into.
If you're afraid, then just admit it. Don't try to run away from our duel by spouting all these denials. Haven't your parents taught you what honor means? This is really the last time I'll say this. Beg me for forgiveness, and then
throw it.
Eugene said as he untied the sandbags hanging off his body.
You wanted to duel, so just throw it already. I said, throw it. A handkerchief, are you going to throw it or not?
First, the sandbags on his left arm fell to the ground. Cyan's expression froze and then stiffened as the impact sent a shockwave of dust rising into the air. Then the sandbags on his right arm also fell. Lastly, Eugene pulled off his chainmail vest and threw it behind him. The vest flew quite a ways before falling to the ground with a heavy racket. Cyan's jaw dropped open at this scene. Eugene sat down and began untying the sandbags from the spear. Seal had been enjoying the show as if she was just a bystander, but now, she also let out an exclamation at this sight. Cyan was the first to bring up the duel, pestered Eugene despite his protests, and finally questioned Eugene's honor. Considering all this, he couldn't back down after coming this far. Cyan lifted a hand to a pocket on his chest and pulled out his handkerchief. I challenge you to a duel, Cyan cried out as he threw the handkerchief at Eugene. The fluttering handkerchief fell onto Eugene's shoulder. Cyan felt thrilled going into the first duel of his life. The moment he had thrown out his handkerchief, Cyan's heart had begun pounding with excitement. How should Cyan go about punishing him? In what manner should he teach this fool a lesson so that his younger sister could also admire his magnificence?
I accept.
Just as Eugene got to his feet, he thrust out his spear. The tip of the spear slammed into Cyan's stomach. Along with this scream, Cyan was sent rolling across the ground.
I've won.
Cyan sprayed vomit all over the place. The dumbstruck Seal let out a scream and ran over to Cyan. Even as tears and snot were pouring down his face, Cyan couldn't stop retching. Seal had approached him out of concern, but couldn't get any closer to her brother upon seeing his disgusting appearance. So instead, she turned and raised her head to glare at Eugene. Coward. Seal accused Eugene.
Who's a coward? From the moment that the handkerchief was thrown, the duel had already started. Since the duel had already started, there's nothing cowardly about what I did. And didn't your foolish brother end up like this because he just stood around trying to look cool after he threw the handkerchief?
You're right, but even so, it was still a cowardly act. You didn't fight honorably in this duel. You could have lightened your blow a bit.
Sorry, but that's already as light a blow as I can manage.
You must have trained your mana.
Children of the collateral lines weren't allowed to train their mana until the bloodline continuation ceremony. This was a long-standing Lionheart family tradition. Only the children of the main house could train their mana and wield real weapons from an early age.
That's obviously a lie. Without training your mana, how could you possibly be able to handle such weight?
It's the result of the training I've done since I turned 7. It's not like you've tried it out for yourself.
Don't lie to me. And then there's your attack. Even if my brother had let his guard down, it was still so fast that he couldn't react properly. As she said all this, her eyes that had been shining with curiosity narrowed in suspicion.
You were actually able to see it?
Just the littlest bit.
It seems like your eyes aren't just for decoration.
You really do have a nasty mouth on you.
It's far from my first time hearing that. And Cyan hadn't just stood there and received the strike. Instead, the moment the attack landed, Cyan had instinctively tried to jump backward. This meant that he, a kid with no practical fighting experience, had instinctively responded to escape imminent danger. That's great for a kid, but as a descendant of Vermouth, it's still garbage.
Seal was finding him even harder to understand. Both Seal and Cyan had also undergone physical training since they were young, but hasn't he only been training since he was 7? Seal thought deeply as she recalled what Eugene had said earlier. You dare. Cyan had finally recovered enough to speak. While taking deep breaths, Cyan raised his head and looked up at Eugene. His eyes were still spinning, and it hurt whenever he moved. How cowardly, Cyan gasped.
It might be because you're twins, but you two really do end up saying the same things. I don't want to repeat myself. Ask your sister what I said when she tried to accuse me of the same thing. Or else you can try and retrace your memories. You might have been spraying vomit everywhere as you were rolling in the dirt, but your ears should have still been working, right?
Eugene snickered as he looked down on Cyan. Cyan couldn't say anything in return.
Now then, you need to start cleaning all this up. You're the one who vomited all over the place. So if you promise to clean up this mess, I'll also go and clean the carriage. Then everything is nice and fair, right? Also, since you've lost the duel, the honorable and polite thing to do would be to acknowledge your defeat by humbly admitting even though you were spouting honor this and honor that earlier, you aren't really going to try and do something so disgraceful as to refuse to admit your defeat, are you?
Eugene continued to provoke him. You dare. Ugh. He couldn't say anything back. The pent-up anger and sorrow building up within him poured out as tears. As his nose kept sniffling sadly, Cyan buried his head in his arms.
I should have just held it in.
Eugene starting to think that screwing with this 13-year-old brat might not have been in his best interests. Finally starting to have a few concerns about the consequences of doing this. Right from the start, now that he had made the child of the main family fall into such a state. While Eugene was thinking about this and that, Cyan was desperately trying to hold back his tears. Young master. The shout came from afar, but the speaker quickly closed the distance. The man who arrived at the gymnasium was dressed in a uniform. What on earth is this? From the fact that he didn't have the lion heart on his breast to how he called Cyan a young master, the man had to be a knight in service to the main family. While Eugene couldn't tell how old the man was, he seemed much more skilled than Gordon, the knight who had been assigned to escort him here. Hazard. Cyan burst into tears. I lost. I challenged that bastard to a duel, but I lost. A duel. Hazard eyed Eugene with a stiff expression. Then he lowered his body and picked up Cyan. Pardon me for my late introduction. My name is Hazard, and I am in charge of tutoring young Master Cyan. Hazard bowed his head in a nod.
I am Eugene Lionheart, from the Jidal province.
Jidal, you say? I believe that is where Lord Gerhard's estate lies.
Yes, he's my father.
So, what on earth happened here?
Cyan picked a fight with me. I tried not to argue with him, but Cyan insulted my father.
When did I do that? Cyan protested.
He said that my father had failed to teach me what honor means, and he called me a coward to my face.
Eugene calmly explained. At these words, Cyan's face went red.
He also said that my body smells like cow milk.
It's the truth. Your body really does smell like cow.
And your mouth smells like vomit, so why don't you just shut it?
So that's why you two dueled? Hazard asked.
Cyan didn't just insult me. He insulted my father. Sir Hazard, was there any reason why I shouldn't have accepted the duel?
You had a good reason for it, but it seems like you were a bit too heavy-handed, Hazard admonished Eugene.
Isn't it an insult to the opponent to show mercy during a duel?
Apologize for my presumptuous remark. Hazard bowed his head once more. I cannot feel any mana coming from Master Eugene. Hazard though as he glanced at the sandbags and chainmail piled behind Eugene just from a glance, they definitely seemed heavy. So Eugene was able to move with all of that hanging from his body? Hazard was finding it difficult to imagine such a sight. Master Cyan, for now, we should take a look at your injuries. While coaxing the boy, Hazard glanced over at Eugene. No matter how many times Hazard examined him, Eugene did not give off any traces of mana.
I stabbed him in the solar plexus with a spear.
Eugene explained helpfully. And where else?
I only landed one blow.
A single blow. Hazard let slip a low groan. If that's the case, Master Eugene, may we meet again? Unable to say anything further, Hazard bowed his head politely. Seal turned to look back at Eugene with a smile, saying, see you later.
Bye-bye.